Welcome to the Referrals Podcast, the show designed to help everyone from the solopreneur to the Fortune 500 company win the referral game. If you want to build a company with an army of ambassadors and raving fans who speak highly of you and refer you willingly, you are in the right place. And now, here is your host, Michael J. Maher.
Welcome back to Referrals Podcast, everyone. Are you appreciative? Are you appreciative? If a court of law was put into place to determine whether you are appreciative or not, would there be enough evidence to convict you of being appreciative? No, you're saying, no, I am appreciative. But if you're on the stand and you're like, I am appreciative, I am appreciative, I am innocent, and yet there's no evidence, then guess what? You're not appreciative. But what if all of a sudden somebody came and they dumped a whole truckload of the handwritten notes that you've written over the years to people? All of a sudden you've got evidence of your appreciation. Or you took a picture of a wall that somebody had in their house that has a ton of thank you notes on it, like our guest today. Or you had an appreciation room like our guest James Malinchek has. He has an entire room in his house that is called the appreciation room. Do you have enough evidence that would convict you, convince the world that you are appreciative? Today, we're going to show you what that looks like. Appreciation never gets old. We're going to dive deep into it today, and we're going to talk about how you can be happy and insanely profitable. So I can't wait to get to that. Real quick on Notevember, you guys are killing it. 10,000 plus notes written. Are you kidding me? Dave DeBrian's going to end up over 1,000 notes written in 1 month, writing 30 to 50 a day. Tanya McLeod says, so many wonderful people to give thanks to. I love writing these notes. Chris Hugs, hey, Michael, I'm at a lull in an open house, and I wrote a note to my 90-year-old mama. I dressed it up a bit for her. Thanks for the ideas. Thanks for the lesson. Thanks for Notevember. Glenda Williamson, that's what we call living with intention. First, you must plan and take the cards wherever you go, as well as envelopes with you in order to be prepared. She is taking them everywhere she goes, in her backpack. She's writing a note whenever she gets a chance. She is well over the 30 notes in 30 days from Notevember. If you're interested in Notevember or 30 mornings or Spring Fest, March Magic, Summer Fest, Fall Fest, any of our classes, you can take them all just by joining Referral Mastery Academy. Go to referralmasteryacademy.com. You literally can take any or all of the courses you want to take that we teach on referrals, on mastering yourself, and you can do that at referralmasteryacademy.com. Today, we have a very special return guest, and that is John Israel. He is the founder and chief gratitude officer of Mr. Thank You, a consulting firm focused on client and employee retention. John is one of the most sought-after speakers and trainers who teaches real estate professionals and far more professionals how to become irreplaceable by creating thriving, profitable relationships both inside and outside their organization. In 2016, John started a personal social experiment around human connection that became a worldwide movement, a book, and a TEDx talk titled The Mr. Thank You Project. John's Mr. Thank You story has been featured on ABC News, Fox News, Good Morning America, and his clients include global brands such as Square, Salesforce, and many others. John's goal is to rehumanize the workplace and marketplace by teaching people how to express authentic gratitude, respect, and appreciation. He lives in Plano, Texas, with his wife, 4 children, and a very loyal Chihuahua. Please welcome John Israel to Referrals Podcast. Welcome, John.
Thanks for that very warm introduction, Michael. Great to be here with you and all your listeners.
One of the best people, right? I mean, welcome back is what I should have said. And part of me wants to say welcome home, right? I mean, it's like that. That is the type of person you are. And I will tell you, so you were on the podcast in, like, it was like 2018, and you were talking about your Mr. Thank You project. So, you know, we're 2.5, 3 years later. Give us a recap on what's been going on since you did the Mr. Thank You project.
Yeah. So I'll kind of give people a little heads up on like what is the Mr. Thank You project in
Yeah.
case you didn't hear about it. So first of all, I run a company called Mr. Thank You, which is a gratitude company. We help people say thank you for a living through strategic gifting. We do that for realtors and loan officers all across the country. And so I was the founder of this company, who was all about helping people express gratitude. And I had this problem that occurred when I heard a quote. And you probably heard this quote, Michael, but it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And what he says was, "Excuse me, I cannot hear what you are saying because who you are speaks so loudly." And for me, what I love and simultaneously don't love about that quote is that it challenges us to be consistent with our word. It challenges us to not just say, I care about gratitude, I care about appreciation, or whatever your values are as a business, but to literally prove it in your behavior. And while yes, in one way I help people say thank you, if you met me anywhere and you ask 100 people who know John Israel, what do you know about him? Like they'd probably say some nice things, but they wouldn't say grateful. They wouldn't say appreciative. And honestly, Michael, they probably wouldn't even say happy to describe me. So I thought, that's a problem that's got to change. So in October of 2016, I started just a personal social experiment around human connection, where I made a commitment for 1 year to handwrite 5 thank you cards every day for 365 days in a row. And there were some rules to it. Every day reset at 0. So I couldn't miss a couple days and do like 15 in a day. I could write a max of 3 cards per any one person. And the final rule was always the interesting one, which was I had to donate $1,000 to charity for any and every day that I missed.
Wow.
So there was a lot at stake every day for a year to find a way to express gratitude. And it changed my life. So I did that for an entire year. And inside of that, it started to just pick up a lot of steam and people heard about it. And it's one of those things, Michael, that it's one of the simplest, inexpensive things you can do to transform your and your life, because it doesn't even need to cost you anything. You don't even need to use a thank you card. You can just literally be conscious of looking at somebody and asking yourself, what do I love? What do I appreciate about this person? And actually saying it. And it's like having gratitude about somebody that you don't say anything about. It's kind of like having a Christmas present for somebody that you never give them and you just leave in the closet. It's like, well, I'm grateful for them. They should know it. But if you never tell them, how will they know? And so it was this crazy experiment that changed my life and taught me a lot about human connection. That is kind of now, what we're doing now is kind of your question is, I come into companies and organizations and teach this idea of, we call it the gratitude advantage, which is how does gratitude transform our relationships with our clients or business partners? Because here's the crazy thing, right? And you're a relationship guy, you know this. Nobody starts a relationship hoping it's going to end. But that's what happens every single day in business. So, what can we do to be competitive, relevant, and valuable to our most important relationships, so they stand the test of time? And so for me, truthfully, when we met, the project was kind of ending. So I was still just learning, what did I just go through? And over the last year, it's been extrapolating a lot of the frameworks and the ideas that I didn't even know was happening that have been shown to be proven to help people build better relationships, make better connections. And the biggest piece is experience more joy and fulfillment, because, we're all in a career where we can make great money. But if you make great money but aren't fulfilled, what are you doing, right? If you're not happy, then why are you working so hard? And that's been kind of the journey I've been on over the last couple of years.
Yeah, happy. What a concept, right? It's like I will tell you, we got away from that somewhere somehow. It became more about numbers and productivity and profit and some of the other things, and less about fulfillment, significance, and happiness. And I think we're getting around to coming back to happiness. People, I have to tell you, I think the millennials are leading the way a little bit. They're never going to work as hard as their parents. The Gen Xers, the millennials saw the Gen Xers like work their way right out of their marriage, work their way right out of health, work their way right out of relationships. And the millennials are like, forget that. Right? Forget that. I think we need to marry like what the millennials know, which is, there's more to life than just money, more than life than just profit. And we need to mix that with some of the Gen X productivity, right? So it's like positivity, productivity, happy realtor, happy mortgage professional. Wouldn't it be great if you were just like a happy professional and everything you did made you happy? Think about that, right? And it's like there is a whole thing on that I would love to speak on in a future podcast. But I'm so in alignment with what you're thinking right now with just like happiness. It's just like people aren't happy in general, and COVID sent them down a path. Some of that, I think being locked down, maybe being held, wherever it was. But the bottom line is happiness is in. Happiness is a thing that we need to really analyze and look at. So how can the habit of appreciation transform the way we live, love, work, and lead others?
It's a great question. And I think part of this is understanding the value of it and really how to do it correctly, right? So like a great example I always think about is during the Mr. Thank You project, I was on a trip to Philadelphia for an event, and we flew out there. And one thing that was crazy is I wrote thank you cards to the pilots on my plane. And
Wow.
I happened to write them on my business stationery. And what was crazy, Michael, is that after landing, 3 out of those 4 pilots personally contacted me just to say thank you for the card that they received. Mm. And one told me, John, in my 12 years of flying, I've never received a thank you card from a passenger. And I just remember thinking, that's crazy. How is that even possible? These people with such a big, significant, important job, and no one's even taken the time just to say thank you to them. Mm-hmm. And then we landed in Philadelphia, and I'm there for an entrepreneurial fathers retreat. So I'm part of a group called the Front Row Dads. It's a really great community. And this was the first event, and there's about 30 of us entrepreneurial fathers. We have our day 1 event. We're in Philadelphia. It's game 5 of the World Series. We're like, hey, let's go downtown Philadelphia, find a place to eat, have some drinks, hang out, get to know each other, because this is the first time we got together. So we're walking through downtown Philadelphia. We find a spot. We go in there. It's super quiet, almost empty. And there's one waitress who's working, and she just looks at us and our huge group and was like, y'all just ruined my night, right? Like, she was pretty upset. She's probably hoping to leave early that night. Yeah. Her name was Shantae. So Shantae greets us, says, hey, I don't think we can take care of you. We kind of beg and plead like, hey, promise, we're going to make it worth your while if you can seat us tonight. So she seats us in the back, and there's a moment, Michael, and we all see this with people, right? Where you can tell they can be super annoyed and frustrated, or they can just accept their fate. Like, hey, this is my life right now.
That's right.
And so she accepted it and did an amazing job. She got all of her food orders, all of her drink orders correct. And I realized at the end of the day, I was like, okay, she's my number 5. She's going to be my 5th card for the day. Just wrote 4 cards to the pilots. So I wrote this note. Here's all it said. I just said, hey, dear Shantae, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for seating us tonight. What you don't know is we're a group of entrepreneurial fathers here for an event to learn how to become better husbands to our wives and fathers to our children while we run our businesses. And so tonight was the first time of our event, and we're just getting to know each other. And we realized you could have given us terrible service and we would have understood. You could have even turned us away and we would have gotten it. But you didn't. You were great, you were gracious, and you helped make tonight amazing. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody in our group. So I write this short note. She's cashing out her tips in the corner at about 2 a.m. when we're closing them down. I hand her the card, and I walk over to the bathroom to go to the restroom before we leave on our long walk to the hotel. I go to the bathroom. I come out, and Shantae is standing there waiting for me with like this huge grin on her face. And she just runs at me and gives me the biggest bear hug of my life and says, that is the best tip that I've ever been given. And then she sets me down. And it was this moment where we just looked at each other for like 3 seconds. And it wasn't customer server. It was just human being and human being having a connection. And I left the restaurant, and I was really curious, and I was confused, Michael, because we actually gave her a massive tip. You think about it, 30 entrepreneurial guys at a conference, high on life, like, let's be generous. But she's holding up this little piece of paper, this little thank you card, and says, this is the best tip that I've ever been given. How is that? I know one of the topics we wanted to talk about today is workplace happiness and doing work that matters. And there are 3 variables that go into people's happiness. Number 1 is helping others, right? Feeling like you're doing something to help others improve and better their lives. Quality of relationships is a second thing. And the third piece is doing work that matters. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question. How does somebody know if their work matters if nobody's there to acknowledge it? Mm-hmm. And so when I think about why did that card matter so much to her and those pilots, is because at the end of the day, that's what we want. There's studies right now that show 70% of people would be willing to take a lower paying job that had higher purpose to it. Mm-hmm. So if you're a real estate agent or a mortgage professional and you want to value building a big team that's loyal to you and loyal to the commitment and the goals, it's your results will not just be driven by how much you pay them. It's by how you can design it to be adding value to people's lives so they feel like the work that they do matters. And that comes from how we acknowledge and recognize people. So there's like some frameworks that go into how to do that correctly, but that's kind of my initial thoughts on it, that I think that recognition, and not that alone, right? There's a lot of things that go into developing and training and keeping a team, right? But I think that's something that is so inexpensive, basically free, that you can build a loyal team that will walk through walls with you, go through downturns, go through hard times, because you're willing to look at them for their greatness, not just their weakness.
Yeah. And appreciation, right? I mean, there's a lot of books out there on influence, like the psychology of influence. You've got Cialdini's book on influence, the psychology of persuasion. You got Kevin Hogan, who's written several books on persuasion and influence. And what's interesting about that is they never talk about appreciation. And appreciation is influential in that, I mean, here's a great way to look at it is, have you ever done something where you went really above and beyond, where you really put yourself out there, or you did something that you just thought was, something, you tried to blow them away, and it wasn't acknowledged or recognized, and they didn't even seem to notice. Well, how are you less or more likely to do something for that person, right? And then the answer to that is you're less likely to do something for the unappreciative person. And then the flip side is, have you ever done something for someone that you just thought was who you are or what you do or part of your job, and they were so profusely and genuinely appreciative? And the answer to that is probably yes. And in that case, how are you less or more likely to do something for that person? And the fact of the matter is, you're more likely to do whatever that next question or next thing is for that appreciative person. So the first lesson there is be appreciative, but not just be appreciative, but express your appreciation and show your appreciation in a big way. And you will have more influence. People will do more things for you. And isn't that interesting, right? So
yeah, well, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, like your teammates and people that work around you, is just, if you're an appreciative leader, people are going to do more for you, period, right? You got to be genuinely appreciative. You got to be, authentically appreciative. But the thing is that, boom, right there, right?
So one thing that I think might be helpful for the listeners here is to understand, like, what's the framework to do this effectively. And so there's this the word appreciate, you'll love this. The word appreciate comes from the Latin word appreciare, which literally translates to appraise or to set the value of a thing, right? So when you think of selling real estate, right? So there's a lot of people in real estate on this or listening to this podcast. What do you need to do before you can fund a loan? You need to have an appraisal, right? Some would argue a good appraisal, but good luck getting that right now, right? But you need an appraisal, which is, what is that? It's someone who looks at a property and they ask a bunch of questions. They're extremely curious, and they ask things like, when was this property made? What's the condition of the foundation or the roof? What are comps for other properties like this going for in the area? They ask all these questions about what's good, bad, right, and wrong with this property. And then they come back to you with a sheet of paper that says, I deem this property to be worth X dollars. So now how do you apply that to a human being? And what you'd learn is that there's actually a framework of what goes into two things. Number one, it's actually meaningful relationships. Like when you think about your best relationships, and also it's the same framework of how to truly appreciate someone else. So we call this the VOW framework of human connection. So VOW, it's easy to remember because when you get married or any type of a significant relationship, there's a vow between each other. It's a promise. So, but I'm going to give it to you as an acronym, right? So V stands for values, O stands for outcomes, and W stands for weaknesses. So when you think about somebody, there's a couple ways to do this. And you ask yourself, what does this person care about? What are their values? What are they interested in? What do they believe in? And you ask those questions about somebody, you start to learn about them at a deeper level. And then you ask another question, which is, what are this person's goals? What do they want to accomplish? And when you think about for yourself, who do you appreciate the most in your business? It's your referral partners. It's the people who send you the most introductions and connections because it's helping you achieve your goals. You love these people. So here's an interesting question. How conscious and aware are you of other people's goals and values? You know, it's so interesting as business people. I love meeting different entrepreneurs. And when I meet their clients, because I do a lot of client appreciation events, I find that so many, whether it's a realtor or loan officer, so many of their clients are some variation of who they are. Mm-hmm. And we learn, it's easy for us to connect with those that are like us, but what about those that are not? Mm-hmm. And so this is a framework that can help you connect with anyone. But the last piece is the W, which stands for weakness. And what that means is, you know, I'm big on social media, and I asked a question to my community. And I said, how do you know somebody is a good friend? And everybody's answers were the same. And they all kept saying, I know someone's a good friend because they showed up during a moment of weakness. Mm-hmm. They showed up during a moment of pain. And, you know, I have a client who's in South Texas, and when Hurricane Harvey came through and devastated real estate, she lost 18 listings overnight. I mean, think about that. I mean, you're not going to feel, there's no gratitude that's going to emerge from your body when you just lost your entire book of business for the year. But I met her a year later, and she's actually like crushing it. And she was really happy. And she said, you know, while that was one of the worst times in my life, it was also actually one of the best times because as a community, we've never been more connected. So we love as successful business people to talk about successes and wins. But you know what, a question I love to ask people, what are you struggling with right now? What's hard for you? Because when we know that about other people, we know how to show up in relevant service to help them. Because when we think about who do we love spending time with and who do we go to bat for, it's those that have gone to bat for us. But here's the challenge, Michael. When you're a successful, busy salesperson, that's the last thing you think about. You're not thinking about showing up for people like that. You're just showing up to do your job and do it well. Right. But when we can back up a little bit and think about this about our people, you appreciate who they are and what they go through so much more, because it's not just like, hey, thanks for the thing you did. It's thanks for all the crap you deal with in your life and show up and do an amazing job. And I think that's where you take gratitude and appreciation to a deeper level, where it actually means something to people. Because if you just write someone a thank you card with a Starbucks gift card, hey, thanks for the referral. Hey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me the other day. It's not going to do much. Yeah. But if you can go a layer deeper, hey, thanks so much for sharing with me about that one thing that you're struggling with, or why you want to buy your house and sell your mom's house. You know, I know this is a very emotional thing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to serve you and support you on this journey. That's where you're taking it to a deeper level that people really connect with.
Yeah, that's powerful. And, you know, one thing that I've observed in just the 3 years since you've been on is, you know, it's one of those where, like, your awareness for things to appreciate is, the radar is on and it's on high. And you're so conscious about what to be grateful for and appreciative of that you don't see the trash. You don't see the things that you could complain about, the things that it's not necessary. It's just one of those where it's just, you get it tuned into a higher sense of self, in my opinion. And it's just, it's a calmer, more peaceful place to be when you're appreciative. You know, it just, you're not tuning into the news, you know. It's just like the news is, you're looking at humans and looking to recognize maybe just not what to surface level appreciate. Don't just appreciate what they do or what they can do for you, but appreciate the humanness of them, like who they are. That's really what I'm getting out of this. And that's what I'm hearing when you're talking. It's just like the radar is so much more up. Honestly, we're doing Notevember right now. Some of the thank yous are somewhat superficial. They're writing them to accomplish a goal, 30 notes in 30 days. But what we're learning here today is don't just appreciate people for what they do or the fact that they're your mother. Appreciate the essence of that person with their strengths, with their weaknesses, with just how they are, their spirit. And that's what I'm getting out of this. And it's powerful. You didn't thank her for serving. You thanked her servant's heart. And that's the difference. And that's what really sunk home for Shantae, and I think that's what really is sinking home for me today.
Well, yeah. And what you're identifying here is actually a great definition of terms is there's a difference of recognition and acknowledgement. Okay. Recognition and acknowledgement. Recognition is saying, thank you for what you did. Acknowledgement is saying, thank you for who you are. Mm-hmm. And the difference there is night and day, right? I mean, how many real estate conferences or business conferences have you been to that people get tons of trophies and awards that they really don't keep or they just leave at the office, right? That's recognition. Hey, thanks for selling a lot of real estate. Thanks for doing a lot of loans. Thanks for doing what you do and doing it well. Acknowledgement is the layer where, and this is where it goes a little different than the definition I gave you of appraisal, where if you consider the idea of an appraisal and you learn about a property and you learn about what's damaged or what's been hurt in the property, what's not ideal, it would lower the value of it. However, it's actually the opposite for people, because when we learn about people's accomplishments, but then we learn about what's hard about being them, what they do means so much more, right? If you've got an assistant or a staff member who's a single mom or whose husband lost their job during COVID and they're working hard to make ends meet for everybody, that makes everything they do that much better.
Yeah.
And that's the part where people just don't even pay attention. And when you look at, so a lot of times, again, when I come to speak for organizations, we talk about client and employee attrition. And this is it. It's almost like when you look at why is there a 50% divorce rate in the United States? And a big part of it is, and you've heard people say this, is I just don't think they appreciated everything I did around here. I don't think they really saw how much work I put into this marriage, into this job. And so what they're saying is, I didn't feel purpose. I didn't feel what I did actually mattered or made any difference. Mm-hmm. And it's a desire in our hearts to know that we matter. Mm-hmm. So something that's important to keep in mind during this Notevember and in the future past it is, what if you made it part of your job to remind people that they matter? Mm-hmm. Because at any given moment, they might have forgotten that they actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really powerful thought, and it's so. I hope everybody in the Gen listened to it and just took that internal, took it internal, because that's the core of referability, in my opinion. And I know that we don't. It's so funny is people come to us for referrals, but what they get in return is usually just a better self, and they turn into better people, and they realize how great of people they are. And it's the referrals are the byproduct to them being people who matter. We just literally just had a guest on not too long ago where, she was just talking about, she tried to do all these things that were other people and stuff like that. And then she finally had an event that she wanted to go to and she just held it. So she held the event she wanted to go to and invited her database, and she was dancing, she was rocking, she was having fun. She got more referrals from that event than any of the others that she ever did. And it was like, and she was like, well, I think it was because of this or that. It's like, no, you were who you were. You were in this element of, having fun, and people got to see the real you, and they got to see what mattered to you. And I think it's one of those where it's a two-way street, right? We see others that matter, but I think we also need to do things that matter to us. and show people what matters to us. You were talking earlier about, I think there's this transparency and vulnerability that increases the value of a relationship. And it just reminded me of this gal who was very successful, is very successful. And we had regularly scheduled lunches, but we were connectors. We were tied together only in the sense of I connected her, she connected me and stuff. And then at one of our lunches, she told me that she was getting a divorce. And we talked through that. And it was just like, our relationship, I thought it was at a 9 or 10 anyway. And our relationship went to a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10 when she was vulnerable, when she was transparent, when she shared with me like what really mattered, like what is really mattering to her right now. And so it's just one of those where, give us some action steps. Like what's 1 or 2 or 3 things, like tips that will help us show and provide more evidence that we're appreciative to the world.
Yes. Well, so a great piece here is, number one, doing this November thing, I think is fantastic. Write a list of who do you think you might want to appreciate. And it's kind of a natural thing. Who do you think you probably should? And easiest ones to think about that often we forget about is mentors, right? People who've impacted our life, people who've made a difference to us. Of course, your team members, right? Of course, your spouse and significant others, your children. Definitely business partners, but especially here's what I love to think, and this is a great way to even develop some future referrals, is the first clients you ever worked with. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when I speak, I say, hey, if you want to get started here, just take your first 10 or 20 closings and write every one of them a thank you card and just tell them, hey, I just was thinking about you. You probably don't know this, but you're one of the first transactions I ever had in my career. Right now, we're doing XYZ number of transactions a year, and I can't thank you enough for being willing, trusting, and letting me help you buy or sell your first property or do your first loan. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sending those cards out to people who are your first transactions, it kind of get like, people love to be part of evidence of success. Mm-hmm. So that's a simple thing that you can do. But to go a layer deeper, I would say take the top 10 people that matter to you, 5 in your personal life, 5 in your business, and write down that acronym VOW, values, outcomes, and weaknesses, and ask yourself, what are the answers to those questions for this person? What do they care about? What matters to them? What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their dreams? What are their weaknesses, and what are they struggling with right now? And I bet for several of them, you might know the answer to all 3 of those things. And then if you can, write and acknowledge that in a note, or just send them a video text or something like that. But here's a great thing. For a lot of those people you wrote down, you probably don't have all those answers. Mm-hmm. Well, you now have the framework for your next conversation. So when you talk to them, again, it's not just about you. And of course, I'm sure many of you are probably great in conversation, but it's really being curious about like, hey, what's going on for you? How are your kids? How's your wife? How's business this year? What are your goals this year? Hey man, I know this might sound like a weird question. What are your top 3 goals over the next 5 years of your life? Right? I learned that question from Todd Duncan. We were speaking at an event together. I know you know Todd pretty well, but that's a question he says everybody should know about your staff. Because if you don't know that question about your staff, then what's going to happen is someone else is going to ask them that question and develop an opportunity better than yours that serves their goals, and they're going to leave. So ask them those questions. What do you care about? What are the top 3 goals over the next 5 years of your life? And lastly is like, hey, what are you struggling with right now? What's the hardest part about being you? What's the hardest part about your business? And then you know what you do is you go on Amazon and you find the book that solves that problem and you mail it to them. You go on YouTube and you look up a couple of videos and you send them a quick link to that solves that problem. And what it does is it tells people you've got their back, right? I do this training called Realtor Relevance in the Automating Marketplace, which is how do we stay relevant as the marketplace becomes more automated. And one of the biggest things that we learn based on research is that why people choose a human to do business with is because we want advocacy. We want someone who's going to fight for us, who's got our back, right? And so when you look at in your relationships, it's the same thing. Is we want someone who's going to have our back and support us during challenging times, because that's innate to our safety. That's innate to our survival. So most people will ask that question and then never do anything. But if you just take one little step and send the note or send the video or send the gift or send the book. That's what tells this person, whoa, this is a different individual. I'm going to answer their call when they actually call me. I'm going to respond to their emails and their text messages, because this is something I love to ask people is, if you call people, we call this the cell phone test. When your phone call comes in and I see your name, what's the reaction? Do I think, oh, they're just going to ask me for business? They're just going to ask me for another referral? Or is it like, oh, I love talking to Michael. Michael always makes me feel good. He's awesome. Michael, what's going on, man? We think about and we treat people differently based on how they've constantly shown up in our relationship. So that for me is just really, over the last few years, become a framework that when I think about my best relationships that have in truthfully in a financial setting, like that have been the most impactful, and I take a step back and I look at those things and I'm like, man, I don't know what they're dealing with right now. I give them a call, I say, let's grab coffee. And I ask those questions and I re-engage that relationship, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Drop the mic, Mr. Thank You, John Israel. Once again, blowing away our audience with just pearls of wisdom and just so much good stuff. And I always appreciate having you on. And we need to do an update like this every year, I think. It's just like what's going on in John's life and, you know, what's next in the Mr. Thank You project, because you're always growing and always sharing. And you know, you're an expert on appreciation. Like, think about that, right? And, you know, I think 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, there wouldn't have been a position for an expert on appreciation. And yet right now in today's world, it's more valuable than ever before. And I just really, really appreciate you, appreciate our relationship, and appreciate you for being our guest here today on Referrals Podcast.
Awesome, man. And can I take a second to say something as well, Michael?
Maybe. Remember,
Maybe.
everything's
Too late. I already asked. Now
remember, everything's editable.
If you say no, then yeah. No, I really want to acknowledge you for writing 7L. You know, I bought that book, referred by a friend, and it was about in 2014. And there's so much I took out of that book that was changed my business. And to be an author, I think a lot of people don't realize how hard that is. Edits and re-edits. And what's even cooler is that you lived the life of 7L, right? Like, that was your real estate business, and you did it, you lived it, you shared it with the world. And every step of that process is really hard. And you experienced a lot of failure and struggles with it, but you did it. And it's still impacts the world with people who don't even know that, who you've never met. And I'm just grateful to call you a friend now, man. It's cool to like have met an author who I looked up to for so long, and to be on your podcast is just a true honor, man. Really appreciate it.
You know, expressing appreciation is an art, you know, and first and foremost, I want to say thank you. But what was interesting is that while I was taking in the compliment, of course, another part of me is like, oh, don't worry about it, right? Or, you know, I want to aw shucks it off, but I'm going to accept it. I'm just going to receive the appreciation. But the other part of it too, is as you were going through that, is just like, this is a master of expressing appreciation. Like, your thank you wasn't, you know, made up or anything. I mean, you didn't have it scripted, but like, moved me emotionally in a way that it's an art form. And I hope this episode becomes the catalyst for our viewers to hone the craft and master the art of expressing appreciation, and just get really good at it. And what's funny, John, is that it's amazing how many people don't know how to do it at all. Instead of giving appreciation, they won't do it because they won't know what to say. Even though the truth is when they get going, it's beautiful. It's poetry. And I hope we inspire more people to go around expressing their appreciation and becoming great at it, because it's worth it. You know, it's a beautiful thing. So
yeah, I love that. And then just one last thing to echo here, in appreciation for all the people who are like listening and actually in the Notevember thing. You know, at the end of my keynotes, I always have everyone write a thank you card to somebody that has impacted their life. And sometimes I hear back from people, sometimes I don't, but I always tell people, hey, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear who it was and what happened. And, a couple of days ago, I was at an event and a mortgage loan officer came up and he said, "Hey, I met you last year when you spoke at the event. And I just want to say thank you for making me write that card, because I wrote it to my business partner. And my business partner I've known since we were in high school together. We started our mortgage company together. And he died 3 months ago. And I had never in our friendship ever truly told him how much I appreciate him until you made me write that letter. And I got to tell him that. And he died a couple months later. He's 42 years old. He's got 2 kids at home. And, I'm totally devastated that it happened, but I'm so grateful I got an opportunity to actually tell him what he means to me. And so I think for everybody who's doing this, you can't have that as an intention or a goal. Like, well, what if this is the last time I ever get to say thank you to this person? But what if it was? What if it really was?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I think if I look in retrospect, what am I so grateful for from that project is that's what I got to do for a year. It's just every person who I could think of that impacted me say thank you. So if something did or does happen, I can honestly feel like everybody knows what they've meant to me. And that is a huge impact interpersonally, but in those relationships, how people show back up for you when you acknowledge them, it's just a different life and a different business you get to run.
Truly. Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you for coming on today. What a like I said, this is going to be one that I would think that people will download, listen over and over and over again. And wouldn't it be great if a year from now we're hearing from people who have internalized appreciation as just one of the things that they are great at. And, Mr. Thank you. I say thank you. Thank you so much for being on, John. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Referrals Podcast, delivering the goods again today. I tell you, I appreciate all of you guys that are listening. If you watch it on YouTube, that's awesome too. But I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot wait for you to see the next episode after this. That's just a tease. I'm just telling you. But here's the thing. The bottom line is that, hey, listen, if you like what you heard today, don't be afraid to share it. Share the message. Let people rate it, review it. But also make sure that you check out Mr. Thank You Project. Check out what John's doing. He's doing great work for a lot of great people. And I'll see you on the next episode of Referrals Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
The release of 7L in 2010 sparked a movement among business owners. Industry-changing Catalyst coaching, Referrals Podcast, and annual summits were created as a result. And now we're excited to introduce the Referral Mastery Academy, the online university for everyone in Gen. When on the Academy campus, head over to the library, get your library card, and browse all of our free resources. Everything at the library is free. Or you can enroll as a student and have access to the library, plus all of our on-demand courses, where you can learn and implement at your own pace. Buy one course at a time. Finally, you have the option to go all in and join the Academy. Academy members get access to all of the on-demand courses, the library, and monthly live classes and challenges. Academy members pay $99 per month and have access to everything. Check it out today at referralmasteryacademy.com.